Aloha Starseeds and magical friends, and welcome to this episode of Psychedelic Neurolinguistic Astrology Salon. And on today's episode, we are going to talk about none other than LOVE Astrology. And on today's episode, we are also going to take a deeper look at the aspects that make up LOVE Astrology. And to be more specific, we're going to look at 3 distinct ways in which one can conduct a relationship reading between 2 lovers. My personal interest in cosmic interaction between natal charts is from a storyline perspective. The universe does love a good love story. And luckily for us, no 2 love stories are the same. And so, on today's Psychedelic Neurolinguistic Astrology Salon, we're going to take a look at the love story between a supermodel and a rock star, none other than David Bowie and Iman. My thesis in university was a comparison between inter- and intra-racial relationships. And so getting to know Bowie and Iman on a personal Starseed Blueprint level has been a real treat. I would like to also thank my friend and fellow goddess, Tiny Aphrodite, for the inspiration for this particular salon. Without further ado, let's get into this conversation all about the aspects of LOVE Astrology featuring David Bowie and Iman. Okay, my friends, welcome to the presentation all about the aspects of LOVE Astrology and featuring a love story between a supermodel and a rock star, David Bowie and Iman. I do have to confess that the inspiration for this also came through the fact that I did a Starseed Blueprint presentation and analysis on Freddie Mercury from Queen. And David Bowie and Freddie Mercury have a beautiful song together called Under Pressure. There's a lot in common in terms of their charts and how you pull through the ethereal realm, certain storylines and music into this realm. In this particular conversation, we are going to have a focus on LOVE Astrology. And David Bowie and Iman do have a very interesting love story, and we can get into how we can learn from the cosmic interaction of these 2 charts and apply it to love relationships in our own life. And as this is going to be a storyline kind of, or a storytelling kind of perspective on natal charts and love natal charts, I have a table of contents that serves as a guideline as to all the topics of discussion that we're going to go through today. Starting with, how does LOVE Astrology actually work? And then following that, the aspects of LOVE Astrology. And you're going to find that there are some similarities between how you would analyze a personal chart and how you would do a synastry reading or composite chart reading as it comes to aspects. And we'll get into the aspects as it comes to a love reading, but you can kind of take some of this intel if you want to take a look at aspects that appear in your own chart. Next, we're going to have a look at a synastry chart reading between Iman and Bowie. So this is the traditional 2 chart reading laid on top of each other, and then we analyze the different aspects and different ways that the luminaries are interacting with the charts. Now, we're going to also then go into a composite chart reading. And there are 2 different ways that you can look at a composite chart reading, which is why I said in the intro that there are going to be 3 different ways that we're going to look at LOVE Astrology. Because a composite chart reading can either be the time in which a person got married, so the time of marriage between the 2, or it can be a blended mathematical method where you take the midheavens of each chart. So it's a blended mode for both of them. And we're going to get into the distinction between those 2 chart readings as well. And then finally, as per usual, for more magic, how you can get your own astrology reading as well as any upcoming magical events that we have planned. So let's start with the basics. How does LOVE Astrology even work? So there's 2 different ways in which you can conduct a relationship chart reading. Synastry readings are when it's the art of reading two natal charts in a relationship, illuminating how individuals interact with one another. It's important to note here that you do not necessarily have to have the people in a current relationship to run a synastry reading. You could actually run a synastry reading on your crush if you wanted to. Now, a composite chart reading is a chart of a couple itself. So it's the vibe of the couple itself. It represents the relationship as a unit. And comparing charts, on the other hand, compares different energies of two charts point by point, whereas a composite chart is a blending of these energies and the reading and the couple's energy as a whole. So if we compare, let's say, the ascending sign, if you have synastry reading, you're going to have two ascendants and those will aspect with each other, which will tell you something about that relationship. If you have an ascendant sign with a composite chart, you're going to have one ascending sign, and that ascending sign is going to be the first impression that you as a couple give off. And so let's use an example as Aries. If you are an Aries rising and Aries ascending, that's you personally, but Aries rising in a composite chart reading would be the vibe of that relationship as a unit. So I think a good way to also remember this is that you can't run a composite chart reading if you're not in a relationship. It needs to be an actual relationship. Whereas synastry readings, it can be a brother or sister, it can be friends, it can be things like that. But composite chart is really about a couple, a unit. Okay, so now we're going to get into the aspects of love astrology specifically, starting with conjunctions. Conjunctions between partners' planets and points represent a point of powerful interaction. And so depending on the planets involved, there can be a strong feeling of similarity and recognition, which is always a good thing. It can feel like you are bonded or that you knew this person even before you met them. Next aspect is an opposition. And the opposition represents polarity and the power of attraction. Opposites attract, right? This can result in a feeling of complementing each other, but it can also bring out feelings of competition and insecurity. So this is why it's always good to be doing inner work as well as working with your partner on energies like that, because oppositions can be very powerful if you know how to work with them. The next aspect that we are going to be discussing are squares. Squares are nothing to be afraid of. Squares point to energies that need work in order to integrate them easily into the interaction between the two charts or the two individuals. While lack of understanding and frustration can sometimes be the result, they can also create just the right amount of tension to produce excitement in a relationship. There's a saying that too many trines make for a boring relationship. And so a few squares can definitely spice things up if you can work through them. And finally, last but not least, we have trines and sextiles. And sextiles and trines are generally considered more flowing aspects in the chart for both natal and synastry and composite. They often suggest an ease and blending of the two planets or 2 points energies. There is often a warm and pleasant understanding and flow. And so those are all the aspects of love that will help us understand the chart readings as we go through Bowie and Iman's charts. So let's get to it. All right, so now that we have all of that intel regarding the aspects of love astrology, we are going to now take a look at Iman and Bowie's synastry chart reading. So first of all, Iman was born on the 25th of July, 1955 in Somalia, and David Bowie was born on January 8th of 1947 at 9 a.m. in the morning. I don't believe I have Iman's exact birth time. I think we put it as an unknown birth time. But regardless of that, we have the synastry chart reading on, let's see here if I can point, right here on the side. And we're not going to go through aspect by aspect of everything. I'm going to, of course, do this with my psychedelic neurolinguistic lens in terms of the stories in which are being told to me from this chart. And we can then take a look at the synastry chart versus the composite chart versus the other composite chart, and just note the different ways in which we can take a look at the energies of this couple. Okay, so some background storytelling here about Iman and Bowie, because I did some research, of course, before doing this chart reading. Iman met Bowie as a result of her hairdresser setting her up, and she didn't even want to get into a relationship with them because she was trying to get out of modeling and didn't want the limelight and just, have like a quiet kind of relationship. And if we all know David Bowie, the flamboyance, the performance, all of that fun stuff. This is why I'm dressed as Kita from Atlantis for this particular presentation, as an ode to David Bowie and the performance aspect of it. And I think there was a really beautiful quote from Iman. I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but she basically said that she was in love with David Jones, and David Bowie was this persona, this performer, but she really fell in love with the real him, the David Jones inside. So let's take a look at the chart. First, starting with sun and moon interactions. In terms of their sun and moon, they have very similar aspects to myself and Kevin, actually, but in just a different sign. I will explain. So, sun for David Bowie, because he was born in January, he's in Capricorn, so he definitely gets ish done. As I said about Capricorns, he's a Capricorn, he's going to get stuff done. All his goals, he's going to achieve them. He actually also has Mars right here, so Bowie's on the outside ring, and Iman's on the inner ring. So you can see here in Capricorn, he's got quite a bit of action in terms of his sun and Mars there. And so the sun represents your soul purpose in your life. And so having the planet of action and drive in that same area as a conjunction means that that drive and energy to fulfill your dreams is definitely there for Bowie. If we take a look at Iman, her sun is actually in Leo, which makes a lot of sense, and kind of funny that her hairdresser was her trusted confidant who set her up with Bowie. There you go. And if you look at her sun here and Bowie's moon, they are right on top of each other in Leo. So Bowie was actually born under a full moon in Leo, and you can kind of tell he definitely has that full moon baby energy that cannot be ignored in the sign of Leo. And Iman's sun sign is in Leo, so there is that very powerful conjunction between the two. So the two charts on top of each other, the moon and the sun, right there. On top of that, Iman was born under a crescent waxing moon, just like me, and so this together is very much a couple that gets each other on an emotional level and loves each other big. Okay, so that's the big sun and moon one that I found super, super interesting. Another thing I wanted to look at in Iman and Bowie's synastry chart reading was the planet of Venus, because the planet of Venus represents love itself, and also in each other's charts, it talks about how you love and how you want to be loved. And so let's just take a look at where Venus sits in both Iman and Bowie's charts and if it aspects with anything else. So Venus looks just like this. So in Bowie's chart, he's on a cusp here in Sagittarius, which I think makes a lot of sense. Sagittarius is a very high thinking sign, idealistic. And so as it comes to Venus being in this sign, of course he would marry a supermodel. He would demand nothing less than that, because very much in his love, like big sweeping gestures, which is, he definitely did that. So how he loves is very dramatic and epic in Sagittarius, but it's also cusping here with Scorpio, and Scorpio is definitely that sign that is very intense, and so a lot of intense love energy here. Also located south node here. So usually when there's like Venus close to the south node, it does represent certain karmic relationships that will happen in this lifetime. So lovers from past lives that will end up coming through in this lifetime. So that's possible here between Iman and Bowie, just based on Bowie's interaction here with Venus and the south node. Now, if we look at Iman's Venus, she's right here, and Iman has a similar aspect to me where her Venus and her Mercury are conjunct, and both of them are opposing his Mars. Oh, actually, that's Mars and his Sun. I didn't know there was that close of a conjunction. That's a little line there. So, two-planet opposition aspect. The planet of beauty and communication in Iman's chart. So, she's very much someone who talks beautifully. At like her love is from speaking about it. She will be very expressive about it. It's all tied into, and if we look at Cancer, the sign in which both of these planets are sitting in, she's going to create a very loving home for those that she cares about. And that opposing the Capricorn, Mars, constantly working energy of Bowie, I think that provides a nice balance of working really hard to get stuff done and provide, but then also being able to come home and rest and recuperate with love and poetry and just stuff that you can kind of keep to in the home. So that's something pretty cool to look at as well. Another thing to kind of look at here is the moon in Iman's case is in Libra, and her moon is in the same sign as Bowie's Neptune. And Neptune is known as the leader or the king of the unseen kingdom. It took me a while to think about that. Poseidon, but also if we think about the symbolic meaning of what water is and the domain of what's underneath the surface, Neptune being in Libra, if you think about Libra being Venusian and balanced and having a dream state that is pleasant and Venusian in quality. And we look at Iman over here where she has her moon in the same sign as Neptune. And so Neptune is also a generational planet. It takes very long to move between signs. And so they are in a similar generation as it comes to Neptune, which is a good thing. With the moon here as well, I think that it translates into the fact that Iman and Bowie will get each other on a deeper level than what's on surface level. So even though you're even able to communicate and stuff on a deeper level, you will just get each other. So that is a synastry reading between Iman and Bowie. We're going to now go into a composite chart reading. Okay, so as mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, or rather in the table of contents about composite chart readings, there are two different ways in which you can do this. So if you don't remember when your relationship actually started, like when you first started dating, or you're not married yet, or you don't have a date by which you can kind of have a crux point on, you can leverage the mathematical midheaven point method in order to conduct a composite chart reading. And in this case, this is the reading that I have between Iman and Bowie. And as you can see here, they're now a blended chart as opposed to before where you had, hold on, let me just. Okay. Just needed to move a little bit so you could see the whole chart, because in a composite chart reading, there are certain aspects you want to kind of think of the composite chart as like one person. So if the couple was in an individual natal chart, that's how you would do this reading. And so let's see here. There's a lot of action here in the ascending sign for Bowie and Iman. You can see here the ascendant. It's based on the midheaven point. It's located in Sagittarius. And so, what was I saying about Sagittarius? Big energy, big dreams, idealistic, mutable, fiery, all of that kind of good stuff. So on the ascending, that is first impressions of people. So people will think of Iman and Bowie as being an idealized version of a couple, which I think is kind of the case, right? they are living out that love story of the ideal version of what a relationship would be, and that is first impressions. And also located in the ascendant area, we have Chiron and Black Moon Lilith, which is kind of interesting. What two interesting luminaries to have in conjunction with what your ascending sign is. Ascendant is, of course, a mathematical point. It's not an actual point. It's calculated based on the time of birth. And so this, based on the mathematical midheaven point method, calculates their rising sign as being in Sagittarius, with Chiron and Black Moon Lilith on that ascendant. And so if we take this in terms of first impressions and the external eye, Black Moon Lilith represents the darker side of human nature, female nature. So in terms of deeper sexuality, they probably definitely have a deep sexual connection that is also infused here with some healing factor from Chiron. So this couple between each other gives a vibe of providing healing and also an appreciation for the darker side of feminine power, which I think, that can come off as like witchy and whatnot, right? But it also is women's deeper root knowledge of things, right? And it's really nice when a partner truly appreciates that about you. Just saying. Okay, so some other things here. Their sun sign, so the whole chart, the composite chart as a whole, Iman and Bowie are a Libra relationship, which kind of makes sense because Libra is a Venetian planet, but also located here, there's a lot of action. So if you take it first glances, there's a lot of stuff going on in the Libra and Scorpio part of the chart. Now, so we can do a bit of a compare and contrast here, because Iman and Bowie, their relationship, although they were very, like, Bowie has a past of being flamboyant and Iman was a supermodel, their relationship was actually very private. They were very homebodies. They like to stay in together. They love just spending time with each other. And if we take a look at this chart here, it definitely plays into that. Like when they go out, they go out. They love dressing up, looking great. That's a very Libra thing to do. This is a very intense couple. Like they come off as very intense in a beautiful way, almost intimidating. But I'd feel like here, the dream world, the soul, how they communicate, all in this Venetian, balanced, beautiful, charming sign of Libra. And then you have the deep emotional stuff. Let's see if there's anything else going on here before we go into the other way you can look at a composite chart reading. Oh, okay. Last thing, because I love the north and south nodes. Their north node is located in Pisces, and we are in Pisces season right now. And of course, that is the sign, the last sign before we break new ground and we are reborn again in the sign of Aries. And their north node being in this sign means that it's going to be about a fulfillment of dreams in this life. And I think they did just that. Now, let's get into a composite part 2. So now we're going to get into the second way in which you can conduct a composite chart reading between two people. So we know when Iman and Bowie got married, and they actually got married on my 7th birthday. Really funny. So they got married in Switzerland on April 24th, 1992. And as you can see here, this is about running a natal chart reading based on the time of the relationship's birth. And so in this case, we're doing it from a point of marriage. And if we look at this composite chart reading, comparing it to the previous composite chart reading, this has the ascendant as Leo. And I think that would actually work as an interpretation, as well as having the ascendant sign being in Sagittarius, as they're both fire signs, and that whole attention, a lot of love from everyone. So I think both of those interpretations hold strong. Located here as well is Chiron on the ascendant in Leo. So regardless of the sign that it's in, both of their composite chart readings have Chiron on the ascendant, which means that their relationship itself provides healing on a scale to other people. So their first impressions, their appearance of a couple provides healing to the world in a bigger way and to each other. So that's pretty cool, actually. Other things to look at here. Moon is in a cusp location between Capricorn and Aquarius. Also in Aquarius here in this composite chart reading, we have Black Moon Lilith and Saturn. And this together can represent a little bit of frustration in Aquarius, where it can be a bit aloof and it's a bit of a social sign. It could mean that others from a social aspect, there can be that push and pull of restriction against the, wild woman or wild darker side of self. And that just might be a testament to the fact that they're just a celebrity relationship. And so there are restrictions to how you can behave based on that, whether or not they like it or not. And it kind of shows up here in the composite chart. Other things to kind of look at are the part of fortune. Part of fortune is another mathematical point based on everything else going on in the chart, and it shows where one has gifts, or it can give clues as to the nature of the purpose of the relationship, or a person too, right? We'll get into part of fortune, I think, on our next astrology conversation. But you can see here it's in Aries, and it's located along with Venus, our planet of love, which is, as I said, another thing to look at as an indicator as to how one loves, as well as how one wants to be loved. And in terms of this composite chart reading, we have Venus in Aries, meaning that it happened fast, and this relationship did happen fast. I think David Bowie claimed that he knew he was going to marry Iman from the first moment that he met her. She just didn't know it yet. And she wasn't sure, but I think she also knew. She just had to ensure that she was getting the real Bowie and not just the performance, because she wants something deeper than that. And I love this, but due to the fact that their relationship fell on my birthday, their sun, the sun of this composite chart reading, is in Taurus. And the vibe of that relationship as a whole, in terms of steadfast and staying strong and staying true, it definitely lasted, right? And David Bowie passed away at 69 of cancer, and Iman has been quoted as saying that she would never love again, and he was the great love of her life. And I believe that. I can definitely relate to how could you get into another relationship after you've been with the person, your true soulmate, and who you were meant to live out this particular love storyline. And so with this composite chart reading as well, if we take a look at the North Node in terms of purpose, that North Node of the composite chart reading lines up with Capricorn here in terms of the practical, earthy way of really getting stuff done. And they sure did. And so that is a comparison between the two different composite chart readings that one can conduct on a relationship. So why does love astrology even matter? And, just like how the birth chart shows the potential storylines available to us and what energies and different archetypes and different vibrations we have to play with at hand, when we have our cosmic selves collide and interact with another storyline, there now becomes whole new other different potential storylines. And now if you take the information in terms of the aspects, all of the unique aspects, just like when you took your first breath into this existence and that blueprint is yours and yours alone, so too are each and every synastry and composite chart reading. So unique. You could spend tons of time just going through every little thing that comes up. And so when it comes to interpretation and reading, the way I've kind of gone about it is that I really love the moon, so I always look at where the moon is. I will always look at where Venus is and other things that jump out to me first. But I'm interested if, from taking a look at this particular presentation and the charts that we looked at, if there are other aspects that you found interesting or maybe things that I have missed. So interested in hearing your thoughts on that. And finally, for more magic, you can always contact us on our website at sacredsomaalchemy.com. We also do still have availability for warrior class coaching. I will include a link to that in the description, as well as we do have our monthly moon guide available with any purchase of Soma supplements that you can get also in the description below. We do have a new astrological year upon us on March 20th, and to celebrate, I will be hosting a live neurolinguistic astrology chat. Psychedelic. I will be hosting a Psychedelic Neurolinguistic Astrology Salon live at 8 p.m. Eastern on March 20th. Ensure that you have that all set aside because daylight savings has been a huge psyop that screwed up everybody, but mark your calendars because I will be doing a reading, 3-card major card reading for all signs. But first, we're going to have a conversation about Pluto moving into Aquarius, as well as the way that the tarot interplays with astrology and how we can kind of leverage that to further get divination and intel into our personal storylines and purpose here. So all that fun stuff, sure, like just around the corner because we are in that season. I hope that you have found this presentation about the aspect of love astrology informative and interesting, and I look forward to seeing all of you in the next one.